I got kind of a high school teacher vibe going on here, and that's because I used to be one, and I'm about to teach you lot a thing or two. The vast majority of people, it seems, who use the phrase separate the art from the artist do not know what that actually means. I'm not going to bury the lead here. I'm going to explain what people think it means and what it actually means. Typically, when people use the phrase separate the art from the artist, in fact, if you Google the phrase and read any article, Reddit post, social media post, YouTube video, whatever, you will see that the general definition of separating the art from the artist is when we acknowledge that an artist, whether they be an actor, a writer, a director, a musician, whatever they be, especially if they're in the public eye, they might not be a very nice person. In fact, they might be arguably a dangerous person, a bigoted and hateful person, a person with money and power, and you're not sure you want to support that person. Your morals, your ethics do not align with theirs. And so the question arises, can we separate the art from the artist? And this, in a very depressing nutshell, means, can I continue to enjoy the art created by an artist whose morals, whose opinions, whose politics, whatever, I do not agree with? This is not what separating the art from the artist actually means, but while we're on the subject, the answer is typically no. You cannot separate the art from the artist, especially in a capitalistic society, because if you engage with the art of an artist whom you do not like, you are spending money on them, which they receive and they can use to continue to fuel their hate and their bigotry, etc. And you're giving them clout, you're giving them a platform, you're promoting them, you are sharing them. This isn't just about your relationship to them, because again, we live in a capitalistic system. You give them money, they use that money. You show interest in their art continues and it spreads to a wider audience. This is very basic stuff. So no, in that sense, you cannot separate the art from the artist, and you shouldn't. However, once again, this is not what separating the art from the artist means. In academic terms, the phrase separating the art from the artist is a tool of literary criticism. And it's pretty simple. If you've studied literature, if you've studied creative writing even, you might know this stuff. And if you can hear the lawnmower out there, I'm sorry. Separating the art from the artist is something that you do when reading fiction, especially in an academic or analytical situation. To separate the art from the artist means to read a piece of fiction or engage with any piece of art without knowing anything about the artist. It's an analytical method. You read a novel or a short story, all you know is the author's name, and you glean what you glean from the text. You connect to the text in the way that you connect to it without knowing anything about the author's biography, their history, the time in which they were writing, maybe even really simple things like their age, their gender, their nationality. It's a pure and basic way of connecting yourself to the text. And you can do this even if you do know about the author. For example, my favorite novel in the whole wide world is Frankenstein. I'm a really big fan, and I know a lot about Mary Shelley, like a lot. I named my cat after her mother. But when I read Frankenstein, and I reread it pretty often, the queer subtext of that book is inescapable to me as a queer person, as a trans person. Frankenstein is aggressively queer. To me, to a lot of people. In fact, so much Gothic fiction is queer. It is the gayest genre of fiction. The Brontes might not have been gay, Mary Shelley might not have been bisexual, although she probably was, but it doesn't matter. Separating the art from the artist is about how you read the text, what you glean from it personally. And I feel an enormous queer kinship with Frankenstein's creature, and even with Frankenstein himself. The setting, the pathetic fallacy of it all, the sublime nature and mood of the text, it is all so aggressively, beautifully, flamboyantly queer. Gothic fiction is queer to its core. It seeps queerness from its pores. And the same is so often true in the worlds of science fiction and horror, at least in my experience. But again, this is about me separating the art from the artist and reading what I read, and you can do it too. We can all do it. But I'm not endorsing it necessarily. I think it's important to know an artist, to know about them. It's good to know that George Orwell literally fought fascists. Because when you read Animal Farm and 1984, knowing things like that about Orwell only strengthens the text and your relationship to it. I encourage people to know the artist. For one, it deepens your understanding of the text, as I just said, and for another, it's good to know whether or not this person is a dangerous, powerful bigot. Always good to know that. Quite often, when I read a book by an author I've never read before, I tend to do a bit of Googling to find out if that person is racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic. I've made the mistake before. We all have. You can't know everything about everyone, and it's up to you to decide what you do with that. Whether or not you continue to support that person, which I would encourage you do not do, or you have a heart, care about people. But I'm not here to appeal to your sense of justice, to your moral compass. I'm just here to tell you that separating the art from the artist is not what you think it is. As a trans person, I'd love it if you didn't support the works of J.K. Rowling in any capacity. I'd really appreciate it on a human level. But this video is about the fact that I just can't stomach how people don't know what separating the art from the artist means in an academic sense. So there you go. That's what it means. It means reading a text and analysing it and criticising it on your own terms without knowing anything about the author who created it. I'm gonna have to cut this short now because there are 2 lawnmowers outside. Luckily, I didn't really have anything else to say. Now you know what separating the art from the artist is, and the thing that we call separating art from the artist is just a way for people to have their cake and eat it too. To enjoy their little boy wizard books and still say, well, you know, I don't really like what she says, I don't really approve of it, but you know, I like my little wizard books with my little wizard boy in them. Separating the art from the artist as we socially and publicly understand it is an unjust thing that you shouldn't do. It matters who artists are. However, when you say separate the art from the artist, it is a tool of literary analysis. And now you know that. Subscribe for books.